Thank you all for being here today to remember my brother Neville. Like most families, we have a lot of stories about Nev. Some we probably shouldn't tell. But I'd like to share a few that capture the kind of person he was and the life he lived. Nev and our older sister Sylvia were born in New Guinea, where our dad was a doctor and mum was a nurse. Neville was only a few months old when the family moved to Brisbane, where Dad established the first medical practice in Zillmere in 1951. Growing up in Zillmere in the 1950s and 60s was a pretty character-building experience. We all ran a bit wild, especially exploring the bushland around Cabbage Tree Creek with the other kids in our street. Neville was always good at sport, particularly tennis. His smash was legendary. Dad built a practice court in our backyard with a brick wall and a line painted on it to simulate the net. Our neighbours were often disturbed late into the night by the sound of tennis balls smashing into that wall for hours. Of course, we often hit the balls into the neighbour's yard. I can remember crawling on our bellies through Wally's vegetable garden next door, often in the dark, retrieving tennis balls like commandos behind enemy lines. That training may have come in handy when Nev joined the Army Cadets at school. Nev was also in the local scout troop and went on weekend scout camps. I sometimes wonder what the scouts taught Nev about putting campfires out. But I digress. Our backyard was pretty versatile. We had basketball hoops, a badminton net, and eventually a pool built next to the tennis court. It was a great place to grow up. Neville also excelled at athletics. He competed in the 100-yard sprint, but when he branched out into field events, he really took it to another level. He broke records at Sandgate High School in shot put, discus, and javelin. Our footpath became something of a moonscape, covered in thousands of craters the size and shape of a shot put from his many hours of practice. Neville's sporting ability was so well recognised that he became sports house captain as well as being a prefect. Neville also had a lifelong passion for music. He started playing trumpet in the school band and later moved to the saxophone. I remember the many hours he spent practicing. He even did some busking in the Queen Street Mall. As teenagers, Nev and I spent time at our Uncle Les's cattle property where we learned to ride horses while mustering cattle. We were basically free labour in those days, working 6 days a week from dawn to dusk during our school holidays. We also learned to ride motorbikes on the farm. Nev later owned a couple of motorbikes and so did I, even though Mum and Dad had strictly banned us from riding them. Dad often talked about the hospital accident ward and the number of injured motorbike riders he saw there, but their warnings didn't deter us for even a second. Growing up in the 50s and 60s was a pretty carefree and sometimes risky life anyway. Nev became very good friends with Paul, who lived in our street. Once Nev got his licence, they went on a few adventures together. One of those adventures became something of a legend in our family. They went camping near Mount Tibrogargan in the Glasshouse Mountains. The next morning, they went for a hike. After a few hours, they headed back toward their campsite. In the distance, they saw smoke, then sirens, then flashing lights. As they got closer, they saw fire engines and firefighters battling a bushfire. It quickly became obvious the fire had started at their campsite. One of the firefighters asked Nev and Paul if they knew whose campsite it was. Of course, neither of them could shed any light on that. So they came home without their camping gear, and the story quickly spread through the family. The legend was born. After leaving school, Nev did a lot of travelling around Australia and also to New Zealand. He was really a backpacker before backpacking became fashionable. He funded his travels by picking up jobs along the way, mainly fruit picking and working on building sites. Neville never married and lived with Mum for most of his life, caring for her until she passed away in 2019. There was, however, another special woman in Neville's life, Jennifer Aniston. Nev watched every movie and TV show she appeared in. He even made me search his Apple TV to find anything she was in so he could add it to his collection. He was always ready to sing Jennifer Aniston's praises to anyone who would listen, and we all agreed she was pretty great. Nev also loved music from the 50s and 60s. His favourite singer was Elvis Presley. He had a large collection of Elvis movies and CDs. That's one of the reasons you're hearing Elvis songs here today. At the age of 70, after Mum's house was sold, Nev briefly rented in Zulmia before deciding he wanted to move to Bribie Island. 4 years ago, he bought a 3-bedroom unit in Bongaree. Neville loved living on Bribie. He loved strolling along the esplanade and chatting with people he met. Whenever I visited, I was surprised by how many people he knew. Bribie is like one big retirement village, and Neville fitted right in. I used to visit Nev once or twice a week. We'd go shopping at the IGA, visit coffee shops in Warrum, and I'd take him to medical appointments or to Myer at North Lakes, where he bought most of his clothes. During those years, we spent a lot of time together. We became closer than we had ever been before. Nev once told me how much he appreciated my visits and the help I gave him. That meant a lot to me. On Nev's 75th birthday, we met up with our sister Maria and our niece Raven in Montville for lunch. On the drive home, Nev told me it was the best birthday he'd ever had, although he did sometimes like to exaggerate. But he was genuinely very happy that day. It was 2 days before his accident. I take comfort in knowing that Neville was happy and content in his final years. He loved living on Bribie, he loved his independence, and he loved spending time with family. Neville's final resting place will be beside Mum, where we can visit them both together just as they were together in life. Mum would be very proud of how we all looked after Nev in his final years. Nev was my brother, my childhood partner in crime, and in later years one of my closest friends. I'm going to miss our visits, our coffee trips and our conversations. Goodbye, Nev. I'll miss you, mate.